If you are watching this, I am dead. My name is Mabel Grace Sweet, and I lived 105 years on this earth. Born March 14th, 1920, in a town so small you wouldn't find it on most maps anymore, Cripple Creek, Oklahoma. Population then was maybe 300 souls. Population now, well, I suppose it doesn't matter now. I didn't get a diagnosis, not like the young people do today with their scans and their specialists and their treatment plans. No, what I got was Dr. Patel, sweet man, couldn't be more than 40, sitting on the edge of my bed at Sunrise Gardens, holding my hand like I was made of tissue paper. September 12th, just 4 months ago. I remember because it was a Thursday, and Thursdays they serve that awful Salisbury steak in the dining hall, and I was grateful to have an excuse to miss it. He said, "Mrs. Sweet, your body is tired," just like that. Not sick, not diseased, tired, like I was an old car that had run out of miles. My heart was slowing down, not stopping, just forgetting to beat with the same conviction. My kidneys were working at maybe 30%. My liver, he said, was showing its age. I almost laughed at that, showing its age, as if my liver was going gray at the temples. He used a phrase I'd never heard before, failure to thrive. That's what they call it, when there's nothing specific killing you, when your body just decides collectively that it's finished. All the parts holding a meeting and voting to adjourn. He said I could have weeks, could have months, maybe 6 if I was lucky, though he didn't use that word. Lucky. The clock started ticking then, but not loud, not like a alarm or a countdown, more like, when you're in a quiet house and you suddenly notice the kitchen faucet has been dripping and you realize it's been dripping for hours, maybe days, and you just never heard it until that exact moment. It was like that. The sound was always there. I was just finally listening. I grew up during the Depression, real depression, the kind with a capital D that meant something. My father worked for the railway maintenance, not driving, which meant we had just enough to keep from starving, but not enough to ever feel safe. We lived in a house that had been painted white once, maybe 10 years before we moved in, but by the time I was old enough to remember it, it was mostly gray wood with white in the cracks. 3 rooms for 6 people. Me, my younger sister Dorothy, we called her Dot, my 2 brothers, Samuel and James, and Mama and Daddy. There was a tree in our yard, a cottonwood, huge thing, must have been 60 feet tall, with bark so deeply grooved you could hide secret notes in it. We did, Dot and me. We'd write little messages to each other on scraps of paper bag. "You are the worst sister in the world," or "I saw you steal a biscuit," or sometimes just "I love you." And we'd fold them up tiny and wedge them into the deepest grooves we could reach. Summer of 1928. I was 8 years old, and we had gone 43 days without rain. I remember the number because Daddy marked it on the kitchen wall with a piece of charcoal, 1 line for each day, 43 lines. The garden had died. The well was so low that Mama would only let us draw water twice a day, and we had to share 1 cup between all 4 of us children. The cottonwood tree's leaves had turned brown at the edges, curling up like they were trying to hide from the sun. There was a barn owl living in that tree. We'd hear it at night, that screeching sound that doesn't sound like hoo-hoo at all, but more like a woman screaming in the distance. Daddy said it was good luck, having an owl in your tree. Said it meant wisdom was watching over the house. On day 44, I remember this so clearly. My hands are shaking, even now telling it. Dot came running into the house, screaming that the tree was dying. She was 6 then, and everything was life or death to her. But this time she was right. The tree had started dropping branches, not little twigs, but big branches, thick as a man's leg, just falling off like the tree was shedding parts of itself to stay alive. Mama said we couldn't waste water on a tree when we barely had enough for ourselves. Daddy agreed. Samuel and James didn't care one way or another. They were older, 12 and 14, and had their own concerns. But Dot was inconsolable. She cried so hard she made herself sick, threw up her breakfast, which was just cornmeal mush anyway, but still a waste. That night, after everyone was asleep, I took the water cup, the one we all shared, and I snuck outside. The moon was almost full, bright enough to see by. I walked out to that tree in my nightgown barefoot, and I poured that single cup of water on its roots. 1 cup for a tree that size. It was nothing. It was stupid. But I did it anyway. And then I did it again the next night, and the next for 2 weeks. I snuck out and gave that tree our water. I'd refill the cup from the well, even though it meant pulling the rope twice as many times, and my arms ached so bad I could barely lift them in the daytime. I'd pour it at the base of the trunk, right where the roots started to bulge up out of the ground, and I'd whisper to it. I'd say, please don't die. Please. Like it could hear me, like it would listen. Dot never knew. I never told her. But on the 15th night, it rained. Rained so hard the roof leaked in 4 places and we had to put out pots to catch it. Rained for 3 days straight. The cottonwood tree put out new leaves, pale green and soft as a baby's skin. The owl stayed, and Dot stopped crying. I tell you that story because it was the first time I understood something about myself, something that would follow me my whole life. I couldn't save everyone. I couldn't fix everything, but I could take one small action, even if it was pointless, even if it was stupid, even if nobody ever knew. I could try. And sometimes, just sometimes, trying was enough, but sometimes it wasn't. I became a switchboard operator in 1941, right after I graduated high school. The job opened up because the girl who had it before me, Constance Waverly, got married and moved to Tulsa. The telephone company in our county was small. We had maybe 200 subscribers total, and it operated out of a storefront on Main Street, right between the barber shop and the post office. The switchboard itself was this massive beast of wood and metal and wires, like a church organ, but for voices instead of music. They trained me for 3 days. 3 days to learn how to connect the whole county, to be the literal bridge between every conversation, every emergency, every hello and I love you, and come quick, something's wrong. You'd sit in front of this board with dozens of holes and dozens of cables, and when a light would pop up, you'd answer, "Number, please." They'd tell you, and you'd plug them through, connect them, make them whole. I was good at it, really good. I had a memory for voices. I could recognize someone just by the way they breathed before they spoke. Mrs. Henderson had a slight whistle when she inhaled. Mr. Jacobs always cleared his throat twice before giving me his number. The Peterson twins sounded identical, but Emma said please at the end of her requests, and Eleanor said it at the beginning. You heard things. Being an operator. You weren't supposed to listen. The company made that very clear in training. Connect and disconnect. That's all. You are not part of the conversation. But the thing about a switchboard is that you're physically connected to every call. The cable runs through your board. You can hear everything if you want to. And sometimes even when you don't want to, you hear anyway. I worked that job for 32 years. 32 years of number, please. Of knowing everyone's voices better than their faces. Of being the invisible woman in every conversation in the county. The work taught me something about humanity, that I don't think you can learn any other way. You hear people at their best and their worst. You hear marriage proposals and death notifications. You hear people calling the doctor at 2 in the morning, their voices tight with panic. You hear teenagers giggling with their sweethearts when they think nobody's listening. You hear old men calling their daughters just to say they're proud of them. You hear women whispering to their sisters about terrible things their husbands have done. You hear everything, and you can't unhear it. There was a philosophy I developed over those years, sitting at that board with my headset on and my fingers flying between the cables. Everyone is having a conversation you're not part of. Everyone is living a life you can't see. Your job, my job, was just to make the connection and then let go. Don't hold on. Don't stay plugged in. Connect and release. Connect and release. But knowing what you're supposed to do and actually doing it, those are two very different things. I remember the smell of that telephone office so clearly, it's like I'm there right now. Wood polish and electrical heat and coffee that had been sitting on the burner too long. In summer, the heat would make the cables warm to the touch. In winter, we had a space heater that rattled when it ran, and I'd keep my feet pressed against it all day. I remember my hands, how fast they moved, how I didn't even have to look at the board. After the first year, I could plug in by feel, by instinct. My hands knew where everything was, muscle memory. The same way a pianist knows the keys. I remember the voices, hundreds of them, thousands over the years, all of them trusting me to connect them to the person they needed to reach, all of them passing through me like I was a ghost, invisible, essential, forgotten the moment the call was complete. That was my philosophy. Be essential but invisible. Be the connection, but not the conversation. Be there, completely there, and then be gone. It worked beautifully. Until 1958. Until I stayed on the line when I shouldn't have. Until I heard something I could never unhear. If any of you young people are still using landlines, which I doubt you are, with your cellular phones and your computers, but if you are, let me tell you something practical about telephone conversations. They are never, ever private. Not really. Someone is always listening. Maybe it's the government. Maybe it's the phone company. Maybe it's just some lonely operator who should know better. But someone can hear you. So if you have something important to say, something secret, something that could hurt someone you love, don't say it on the phone. Say it in person or don't say it at all. And here's something else, something I learned too late. If you know something that could save someone pain, tell them. Even if it destroys everything, even if they hate you for it, even if it ruins Christmas dinners and family reunions for the rest of your life, tell them. Because the silence becomes a weight you carry until the day you die. And it gets heavier every single year, and you never get strong enough to hold it. Don't balance checkbooks over the phone. Don't give your social security number to anyone who calls you. You call them back on a number you look up yourself. Don't trust anyone who says they're from the IRS and demands immediate payment. Don't leave voicemails with your full name and address. These are things I learned watching people make mistakes for 32 years. But the biggest practical advice I can give you, the thing I wish someone had told me, your conscience is louder than any secret. You think you can keep something buried. You think you can just not tell someone something and it'll be fine. But it won't. It'll eat at you. Every holiday, every birthday, every time you look at that person's face and know you're holding something back, it'll consume you from the inside out until you're just a shell pretending to be a person. Tell the truth, even when it costs you everything, especially then. It was October 14th, 1958, a Tuesday. I remember because it was the day after Columbus Day and the schools were back in session, so the lines were quieter than usual in the afternoon. Around 2:30, a call came in. The light popped up. It was the Harrison residence. That was Dot's house, my sister. She'd married Frank Harrison in 1946, and they'd bought a little house on Elm Street, white with blue shutters, and they had 2 babies by then. Michael and Ruth, I plugged in, number please. But it wasn't Dot. It was Frank. I recognized his voice. Immediately he had this deep rumble, like distant thunder. He said, "Station 479, please." I knew that number. It was the Riverside Motel out on Highway 77, the place you went when you didn't want to be seen, the place with hourly rates and parking around back. I should have just connected him. That was my job, connect and disconnect. But something in his voice, something furtive, something guilty, I don't know. I plugged him through, and then I didn't pull my cable out. I stayed connected. I listened. A woman answered, not the motel clerk. A woman. She said, "I was hoping you'd call." Her voice was warm, intimate. The voice you use when you're smiling. Frank said, "I can't stay long. Just wanted to hear your voice." She laughed. Said, "When can I see you again?" He said, "Thursday, same time." I told Dorothy I have to work late on the Henderson account. Dorothy, my sister's full name, the name only people outside the family used. Inside she was Dot. Always Dot. The woman said, "I hate sneaking around like this." Frank said, I know, but just a little longer, I promise. I'm going to tell her. I need to find the right time." They talked for 6 more minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the wall, the second hand going around and around, and I counted 360 seconds of my brother-in-law telling another woman he loved her, that he'd leave my sister soon, that he just needed to wait until after the holidays because he didn't want to ruin Thanksgiving for the kids. When they hung up, I sat there with the cable still in my hand. My fingers were numb. I remember that specifically. I couldn't feel my fingers. I should have told her that day. Should have gone straight to her house after my shift and said, "Dot, I heard something. You need to know." But I didn't. I told myself it was because I didn't want to hurt her. I told myself it was because maybe I'd misunderstood. I told myself it was because it wasn't my place. But the truth? The truth is I was a coward. I convinced myself that maybe it would end on its own, that maybe Frank would come to his senses, that maybe telling her would do more harm than good. I invented 100 reasons not to say anything, and every single one of them was a lie, I told myself, so I could sleep at night. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. I'd see Dot at Sunday dinners, and she'd talk about Frank, about how hard he was working, how dedicated he was to providing for the family. And I'd smile and nod and pass the potatoes and say nothing. The affair lasted 2 more years. 2 years of me knowing and staying silent. 2 years of watching my sister love a man who was betraying her every Thursday afternoon at the Riverside Motel. She found out in 1960, found a receipt in his jacket pocket, confronted him. He admitted everything. They divorced 6 months later, and it destroyed her. She was 34 years old, with 2 children, and no job skills because she'd been a housewife her whole adult life. She had to move back in with our parents, had to start over from nothing, and I never told her I knew. Not then, not ever. She died in 1997, 63 years old, heart attack. Quick, at least. I stood at her funeral and I thought about telling someone then, confessing to her kids maybe, but what would be the point? She was gone. The truth couldn't help her anymore, but it's haunted me every day since, every single day for 67 years. Dot, if somehow you can hear this, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You deserve better. You deserved a sister who was brave enough to tell you the truth, even when it was hard, even when it would have hurt. You deserve someone who loved you enough to risk everything to protect you. I failed you. I chose comfort over courage, and I failed you. I told myself I was protecting you, but I was protecting myself. I didn't want to be the one to break your heart. I didn't want you to be angry at me. I didn't want to lose you. So instead, I let Frank steal 2 more years of your life. 2 years you could have been healing, starting over, finding someone who deserved you. I stole that from you. Me, not just Frank. Me, and I can't. I can't take it back. I can't undo it. I lived to be 105 years old, and I never found a way to forgive myself for it. I'm sorry I'm leaving you, Michael. You're the only one left now. My great-nephew, the only person in this world who still calls me Aunt Mabel. I'm sorry I won't be at your daughter's wedding next spring. I'm sorry I won't meet your first grandchild when they're born in April. I'm sorry I'm leaving you with this burden, this confession, this ugly truth about who I really was. You thought I was a good person. Everyone did. Sweet old Mabel, the telephone operator, the woman who never married, who devoted her life to her family. But I wasn't good. I was selfish. I was a coward. And I want you to know that, because I don't want you to grieve someone who didn't exist. Grieve me for who I actually was, flawed and frightened and failing, right up until the end. The one truth I learned about life, it's this: there is no right time to do the hard thing. There's no perfect moment to tell the truth, or ask forgiveness, or admit you were wrong. You think if you just wait a little longer, it'll be easier. It won't. It'll only get harder. The weight only gets heavier. Do the hard thing now, right now, today, not tomorrow, not next week, not after the holidays. Now, because someday you'll be 105 years old, and you'll be sitting in a nursing home room with floral wallpaper and fluorescent lights, and you'll be trying to figure out how to say goodbye to the world, and you'll realize that all those things you were going to do, all those truths you were going to tell, all those apologies you were going to make, you're out of time, and the regret will fill your chest like water, and you'll drown in it. So don't wait. Whatever you're holding on to, whatever secret you're keeping, whatever truth you're afraid to speak, let it go. Tell them. Fix it. Do it while there's still time. I don't know how to end this. I've never been good at goodbyes. I've lived for over a century, and I still don't know the right words. I suppose I just say thank you for listening, for letting an old woman confess her sins. And I say I'm sorry to everyone I hurt, everyone I failed, and I say goodbye.